Oh boy. All right. What is good, everybody? It is the Godfather of VR, the ageless one of the man, Lincoln Clay, and today we're coming at you with a one-off podcast. Um, we want to talk about the self-destruction that was the Detroit Lions today. Um, they went from having a trip to the Super Bowl pretty much locked up to having a second half meltdown, and so they got sent home. Um, Naturally, I'm going to talk about why I think they lost the game, and but mainly I want to talk about why I think they might not get this chance again in my lifetime. Um, if you notice, my jacket's a lot darker blue. It's a Lions jacket. This is a jacket that I bought in 1990. So, it's still got the old Lions logo. Um, that doesn't have the that doesn't have the details. Uh, the, um, yeah, I'm still at a loss for words. Honestly, I thought I was gonna be in tears. I'm still numb and I'm still shocked. And as far as this stream goes, I don't expect it to get a lot of views because number one, this is a gaming channel, and number two, there's a ton of Detroit Lions channels out there, but I'm just as much a sports fan as I am a gamer. Um, Growing up, boxing fan, football fan, baseball fan, basketball fan. I wouldn't necessarily consider myself a hockey fan, but whenever the Red Wings are doing good, you know, I usually take note of it. But the as far as the Detroit sports teams goes, naturally, the Detroit Lions have commanded all of our attention. So Lions jumped out the blocks first half. Um, Jumped up to a 24-7 lead, and it looked like the Lions were on their way to destroying the San Francisco 49ers. The first touchdown, that sort of an end around to Jameson Williams, and he scored a touchdown. Brilliant play because I felt like the Lions needed to run some kind of trick play to make San Francisco fall back into an honest defense, because I figured whether they were going to try to stop the run or whether they were going to try to stop the pass, Frisco was going to bring a lot of heat. And sometimes you need those trick plays to make them fall back into an honest defense and put them in a situation where they have to wait and see what kind of play develops and then react to it instead of them being the aggressors. And so, and from there, the running game got going. I think David Montgomery was tremendous. And Goff was he was precise. He was efficient the first half. And hell, um, the defense got moved around a little bit, but hey, they made the stops when they had to. They got an interception in the first half. Um, I think they made the 49ers punt once, and I think they held them to a touchdown at halftime. So I think the Lions were up 24-7 at the half. But then in the second half, some things reared its ugly head. The Lions don't score a lot of points in the second half. When the other team makes adjustments and they start moving the ball, the Lions, give up a lot of yards in the secondary. The Lions in the second half of a lot of games, they seem to back off of pressuring the quarterback and kind of fall back into a zone and give the quarterback all kinds of time. So they end up getting carved up in the second half. And then you got Coach Dan Campbell taking chances, going for it on fourth down. Uh, this loss, there's plenty of blame to go around. Think right on down to Brad Holmes. Think he gets a little bit of blame. Not so much for losing this game, but for not addressing an issue. Um, Dan Campbell certainly gets some blame. Aaron Glenn definitely gets some blame. Even Ben Johnson gets a little bit of blame. Yeah, players dropped a couple of passes, in particular Josh Reynolds, because I felt like David Montgomery was going to be the X factor. I think whether we win or lose this game was going to be dependent on how effective the running game was going to be, and that's with David Montgomery. I think, the Lions got a two-headed monster with David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, but I think in terms of controlling the clock, I think the Lions are better suited with having David Montgomery out there. I mean, he's a bowling ball. I mean, you give him the ball, he gets you 5, 6, 7 yards. Whereas Jahmyr Gibbs is he's a beast, but I think he's an explosive back. Where you give him the ball, either he's going to explode for a big run, or he might get hit at the line of scrimmage. And that's not all. I don't really think that's his fault. I think that's a case of the Lions not necessarily utilizing him to the best of his abilities, because some of the things that I've noticed with Jahmyr Gibbs is when the Lions line up in the shotgun and try to run Gibbs out of the shotgun, that he struggles. I've noticed a couple of games where when Jared Goff lines up under center, both Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery are productive. And not only that, it sets up the play fake, which when they run when they get the running game going and they run that play fake, Goff has a lot of time and he delivers accurate strikes. He's probably, in my opinion, Goff might be the only person that doesn't get any blame for this loss as far as I'm concerned. Sure, he threw a couple of balls that were behind the receivers, but they were catchable. And those balls that he threw behind the receivers was a situation where he got flushed out of the pocket. And I think those times where Jared Goff got flushed out of the pocket, I think that's where Ben Johnson gets some of the blame, because sometimes the Lions will send everybody out in passing routes, even the running back. And when you do that and the other team decides to blitz, you're gonna have more people coming after the quarterback than you have blockers to defend them. You send everybody out for pass routes, then you only got 5 blockers, staying back to protect the quarterback. But if the opposing team is sitting in the front line and then they're still blitzing 2 or 3 people, that's 7 on 5, 8 on 5, and that offensive line will certainly lose those battles. Um, hmm. So I think like the third and long situations, um, I might have to go back and watch the tape, but right now I'm feeling like saying that, okay, if you're going to send everybody out on pass routes, at least have the wide receiver and the tight end, you know, bump somebody and slow them down for a second before they go run their routes. I'll have to go back and watch the game, go back and watch the replays, watch the highlights, and see if they actually did that. But yeah, when they sent everybody out on pass routes and the defense decided to blitz, there wasn't enough blockers staying in to pick up the blitz, and it put Goff behind the 8 ball. And he was having to sidestep, having to roll out of the pocket and stuff. So I think when you're in a third and long situation, the quarterback needs enough time. He needs enough protection to give the receivers time to run their routes, for the quarterback to deliver an accurate strike. And, if you're facing 3rd and 18 and the defense decides to blitz you, they're probably going to get to the quarterback before the receivers can run their routes. And then, he would have to hang on to the ball even longer if the secondary's in man coverage and they're staying with the receivers. So but I think in staying with talking about the Lions controlling the ball, I think if they kept pounding the ball with David Montgomery, they wouldn't have found themselves in these third and long situations. The Lions, in my opinion, they broke some things that didn't need to be fixed. David Montgomery was, like I said, he was a bowling ball. And I mean, he was pounding that ball on him. He was punishing him. And they decided to take him out of the game. And they didn't put him back into the game until after Jahmyr Gibbs fumbled. Coming over to Dan Campbell, Lions scored 3 touchdowns and a field goal. And that field goal that they scored, Michael Badgley, I think he hit like a 40, I think he hit like a 46-yard, 44-yard field goal. Banged it straight through the uprights. The next time the Lions got into field goal range, send Josh Reynolds and Cam Sutton to Costco for a hot dog roller. They fucking suck. I think today's game is probably the first game where I seen Josh Reynolds drop some critical passes, because honestly, I figured he was going to be the one that was going to be left in a one-on-one situation because, they got it. Defense have to pay attention to St. Brown. They have to pay attention to Laporta. Um, when they are in a third and long situation and Gibbs lines up next to Goff, they have to be aware of him if he runs a quick route to the outside. C.J. Gardner can walk too. Bro want to talk shit all morning before the game, and he hasn't done fuck for this team, but he's a distraction. That was a stupid penalty that he picked up, and he's been talking a lot of shit. It seemed like he been looking for people to talk shit with. Because he talked that shit back and forth with Baker Mayfield last week. And then I guess there's some shit was going on between him and Deebo Samuels. So on that interception, out of nowhere, he just decides to go ahead and hits Deebo Samuel, and they get backed up 15 yards. Fortunately, they did cash in on it, and they still got the touchdown, but it was still a stupid penalty. You may not see C.J. Gardner come back because I think he only signed a 1-year deal. And I'm eventually going to get to that part about why I think the Lions may not get in this situation again because I guess to go ahead and come back to Dan Campbell and get him out of the way. I think it made no sense for him to go for those 2 fourth-down conversions. I don't care if he does. I don't care if he did get us here by taking chances like that, going forward on 4th down and finding success with it. There comes a time where, in basketball, every single shot cannot be a 3-pointer. There is a time where sometimes you got to take the easy layup. Now, the situation with, as I said a few minutes ago, Badgley, the field goal kicker, he hit that 44-yard kick, I believe it was. It might have been 44, 47 yards. In any case, he hit it. If he would have missed it and Campbell didn't trust him, maybe then I could understand him going for it on 4th down. But the dude banged it straight through the uprights. Get a dude a chance. I mean, what's the sense of even having a field goal kicker if you're not going to use him and you're just going to keep going for it on 4th down? I'll be back down Campbell until I'm blue in the face. But that field goal to go up 3 scores is inexcusable. Sad way to go out. Josh Reynolds catches one of those 4th down passes and we win the game. That particular game is so many areas where you can point to. If they would have done this, we would have won the game. If they would have done that, sure, you could say that if Josh Reynolds would have caught one of those passes, we win the game. If Dan Campbell would have took those 2 field goals instead of going for it on 4th down, you could say we would have won the game there. Defensively, if the defense would have made some stops in the second half. Now, I know that our secondary is suspect, but that is no excuse because that defense was lights out in the first half. They was getting after Purdy, and even though he was getting the ball off, he still had people in his face when he was getting the ball off. Defenders was getting their hands up and batting the ball down or disrupting the throw. And then in the second half, it seemed like they just stopped pressuring him. They let Purdy sit back in that pocket and throw the ball. And then whenever the secondary was able to stay with the receivers, and the front four was able to close in on Purdy, they let him escape the pocket, and then before anybody even came anywhere near him, he had already ripped off 15, 20 yards. So we were not great defensively. Hutch has got to be frustrated with little to no help on the line, especially in the second half. And that's where Brad Holmes gets some of the blame, because people were screaming that we needed another edge rusher before the trade deadline, and he didn't do it. I think people were talking about, I think they said they should have got Chase Young or Montez Sweat or something like that, which I haven't been following football super deep the way I have been in past years, because there was a time where I did feel like the NFL had it in for the Lions and kept, fucking the Lions in the ass with these calls. And I just got tired of watching the Lions get screwed over and always seeing Dallas and San Francisco and New England and in the Super Bowls and shit like that. I just got tired of watching the NFL after that shit. But Brad Holmes gets a little bit of this blame, because while they did not make the trade for Sweat or Young, they did pick up Bruce Irvin. And when they picked up Bruce Irvin, whenever they went after the quarterback, they got him. They were getting sacks. After they released Bruce Irvin, cut him, whatever you want to call it, whenever they brought the blitz, they were still getting after the quarterback, but they could not sack him. He was still able to get the ball off. The quarterbacks were still able to get the ball off. But when they had Bruce Irvin there, they were getting to the quarterback and they were sacking him. So they should have kept Bruce Irvin. I think everybody was of the impression that because they cut Bruce Irvin, James Houston was ready to go. But I don't think if James Houston played today, I barely noticed it. I wasn't really looking for him like that. I wasn't really looking for James Houston until the second half, when the Lions were not getting after the quarterback. So it was almost like, I think in the first half, like I said, they was bringing pressure after Purdy. Not only that, when they were blitzing in the first half, they were bringing the blitz straight up the middle. So Purdy could not escape. He had no choice but to get rid of the ball. But in the second half, when they stopped blitzing and they let him sit in that pocket and get comfortable, if his first and second reads weren't there, he took off running and ran straight up the middle, because his blocking parted shit open like the Red Sea, and he was able to run straight up the gut on the Lions. And by the time somebody would finally get after him, he had already been 15, 20 yards down the field. So Aaron Glenn, in my opinion, gets the blame there, because if he, to me, he turned off the heat. If he keeps the heat on Purdy, he has no choice but to keep throwing the ball. He doesn't escape. He doesn't escape the pocket like that if the Lions kept blitzing. So Aaron Glenn gets some of the blame there. Let me see here. We just don't have a standout corners, and that killed us in the end. I think you can get away with having a weak secondary if you can get pressure on the quarterback. I think the San Diego game was the game where everybody was screaming that we absolutely had to have another pass rusher, because they barely escaped that game. And that's when they made the move to get Bruce Irvin. And as I was saying, that once they got Bruce Irvin, yeah, they were still like, they might have got burnt a couple of times, but they were still getting sacks. They were still forcing quarterbacks into bad throws. They were getting interceptions. Because they forced the quarterback to get rid of the ball faster than he wanted to. Why activate the guy if he's not ready? I follow a guy. I'm not gonna mention his name, but I follow a YouTuber who covers who has a Detroit Lions channel. Well, it turns out that this guy that I follow, he was a former beat writer for the Detroit Lions. So he has been in the locker room and he has interviewed Lions players of the past, from back in the Barry Sanders days or whatever. I think he said he was a reporter for about 15 years. And so even though he's not a reporter anymore, he's a real estate agent. He still has friends that are reporters themselves. Therefore, he has sources. So according to him, when James Houston was screaming that he was ready to come back, um, the sources that he got was that the Lions didn't like what they saw out of Houston as far as practice goes. Um, so they held him out of the Tampa Bay game because he wasn't ready yet. Um, to me, the James Houston situation was insignificant. Then I learned that his injury was a broken ankle or some shit like that. It would be hard for me to trust a situation like that. Dude was gone all damn year, and you expect him to come in and have an impact instantly. They should have kept Bruce Irvin. 100% should have spent a third or some on for someone, especially because Chicago got Montez Sweat for a second, and dude's a beast. Him and Hutch would have been insane together. Again, I like Holmes didn't trade for him, but he at least addressed it with Bruce Irvin, and he paid off immediately. So I thought they should have kept him. Out of all these people that the Lions have been dropping, waving, that's the one that didn't make sense to me. Getting rid of Bruce Irvin, that's the one that didn't make sense to me. Um, I'm also wondering about the James Mitchell situation because when Sam Laporta got hurt in the season finale against Minnesota, or was that Dallas, or was that the Dallas game that he got hurt? In any case, James Mitchell came in and made a huge catch for them. Going into the playoffs, he gets put on injured reserve, and I'm like, I'm wondering if he's really hurt or not. But I mean, I guess I let that decision slide because Brock Wright is, he's pretty good too. So I figured, okay, you know, we still got a solid backup tight end and Brock Wright behind Sam Laporta. So I figured we were all right then. But then when he got hurt, I was like, damn, we super, super thin at tight end. When they signed Ertz, that was a weird situation. Well, I mean, that was a situation to me that, like, was at by that time was done. They had already placed uh, James Mitchell on injured reserve, which means he was not eligible to come back. So he was gone for the year. And then Brock Wright got hurt, gone. So now Laporta's the only tight end you got. And they were talking about using Dan Skipper as a tight end. At least that's not so much that the Lions. I don't know if the Lions was saying that, but like just I've seen a lot of people talk about that too, about using Dan Skipper as a tight end. So the Ertz situation, I guess I don't have a lot to say about that because they were down Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. When I plugged this, the was going weak in this headset. So when I plugged this charging cable up in there, it shut the headset off. So apologies. Okay, so what I was about to say is like, so we already been through. We already got through why they lost the game. Um, I don't think. I think they didn't come up. I don't think they protected Goff that well in the second half because he was clearly uncomfortable because he was getting flushed out of the pocket and throwing balls across his body and stuff like that to avoid sacks. Um, they stopped using David Montgomery when he was knocking them over like bowling pins in the first half. Dan Campbell with the fourth down gambles. Aaron Glenn backing off blitzing because they were getting some heat on Brock Purdy in the first half. In the second half, they let him sit there and get comfortable. And then whenever he couldn't find an open receiver, he had an open lane dead in front of him. He was taking off, going straight up the middle, getting 15, 20 yards before somebody even got near him. We had a couple of drop passes with Josh Reynolds, which was really, really disappointing because I actually thought he would be the reason that the Lions would win that game because my thinking was that in the passing situation, they were going to pay strict attention to St. Brown and Sam Laporta, so that would probably leave Josh Reynolds in a lot of one-on-one situations, and he dropped a couple of crucial passes. Um, so yeah, I think if you were to put a gun in my head, even though there's a lot of blame to go around, but this particular game right here, I think Dan Campbell and Aaron Glenn were the biggest reasons we lost that game. And that is such a heartbreak because I think the Detroit Lions wanted to win the Super Bowl for the city more than they wanted to win it for themselves. This team played their ass off. And even though Dan Campbell killed them in the Dallas game going forward on fourth down 3 times, the players still supported him. They still rallied around him. They still believed in him. They still played for him. Now, this is where I bring up the Lions 1991 team. 1991, the Lions finished 12-4 under Wayne Fontes. One of the reasons why they got the 12-4 is because they were playing on emotion. I think 6 games into the season, they were playing a game against the Rams, and Mike Utley had a freak accident, and he ended up getting paralyzed from the waist down. And then Rodney Peete went down with a torn ACL, and in comes Eric Kramer. So they were playing hard for the fallen comrades. Feel for Goff. I thought he played fine. Yeah, you could tell he was uncomfortable because he was running, and bro never runs. Not having Jonah Jackson showed in the second half. I don't even think it was the offensive line. I think they gave him I kind of think the offensive line did the best they could, but as I was saying, that when you have a situation where you got 5 blockers having to hold off like 6 or 7 people coming at Goff on one of those plays, Penei Sewell, he had took the outside guy, the outside rusher. He blocked him, and then he saw a blitzer coming in from his left, so he released the outside rusher and tried to take on the blitzer. And he got there a second too late, and both of them got through. He can't be in 2 places at once. So I think the offensive line, all things considered, did a pretty good job. What I blame it for was sending everybody out for pass routes, sending the running backs and the tight ends and everybody out for pass routes, and nobody dropping back to protect Goff. And so, like I said, that's one of those things in numbers. Like when the Lions were getting cooked earlier in the season, and they decided they had to start blitzing to start getting pressure on quarterbacks. Okay, if they got 6 blockers because they're keeping a tight end, because they're keeping the tight end back to block, that's 6 blockers. You send 7 people. If they keep 2 tight ends to stay in and block, that's 7 blockers. You send 8 people. So I feel like however many people they're going to keep in as blockers, you send at least one more person. And that's what, Jared Goff, in my opinion, was dealing with. 5 blockers against 5, 6, 7 attackers. There's no way you could ask that offensive line to hold off 2 or 3 people blitzing. So I think under the circumstances, while Jared Goff didn't look as good in the second half as he did in the first half, it certainly wasn't his fault, and under the circumstances he didn't have any fumbles, he didn't throw any interceptions. He said, I feel for Goff. I thought he played fine. You could tell he was uncomfortable because he was running. Bro never runs. Oh yeah, I had already read that. In my eyes, Goff is now the QB and of the future. I hope he gets contract extension. I think he'll get his contract extension. The question is, how far apart are they going to be between how much the Lions are willing to pay and how much money Goff is going to want? Because I think they're going to have to meet in the middle somewhere. Because I think it was also odd not seeing Amon-Ra a lot this game too. He just wasn't as impactful as he was in the prior game. That's because he was going to command a lot of attention. San Francisco had to keep their eye on Amon-Ra St. Brown the same way we had to keep our eye on Deebo Samuels. Because Deebo Samuels, in the passing game, he was not terribly effective. A lot of his impact came from those end arounds and shit like that when they was handing the ball off to him and letting him run around the outside. So he wasn't I don't think Deebo Samuels really killed us like that as far as passing goes. He did catch some crucial passes, but he didn't light us up the way CeeDee Lamb did. So, again, that takes me back to the Lions not blitzing. They let Purdy sit there and get comfortable in that second half. So in the second half, other than Christian McCaffrey getting going, he eventually got going a little bit. But other than that, the second half, I don't think it's what the 49ers did right. I think it's what the Lions did wrong. And one of the things they did wrong was not keeping the pressure on Brock Purdy. Long time ago during the Barry Sanders days, their radio voice back then was Mark Champion. And back then, in those days, the Lions would always be in situations like what we saw tonight, where they would be in the lead and they would find a way to lose the game. And I remember Mark Champion saying that the Lions got to find a way to stick the knife in and turn it. He said they got to find a way to put teams away, in the fourth quarter. That reared its ugly head tonight. I mean, that's not a situation that was happening to the Lions. It wasn't happening to them all year. It's just it picked the worst game for it to happen. And to me, it came down to the coaches. Campbell taking 6 points off the board with the fourth quarter gambles and not taking the field goal. Aaron Glenn not keeping the heat on Brock Purdy. So going back to what I was going to say about the 1991 season, Lions finished 12-4 that year. They went to the playoffs. They got a bye because the playoff format was a little bit different back then. So so back then in 91, Washington was the number one. They were the number one seed. They had a bye week. The Lions were the number two seed. They had a bye week. The Lions had already played Washington in the season opener and beat them 45-10. Now, something to keep in mind in that game was that Barry Sanders was not in that game. So you fast forward to the NFC Championship game, because the Lions had already beat Dallas and moved on to the championship game, and then the media was pointing out how the Lions had never won at RFK Stadium, and the Lions hadn't beat the Redskins since like 1967, all kinds of shit. And the Lions were only down 10-7 at the half, but they ended up getting blown out like 46-10 or some shit like that. Lions lose that game. And I'm thinking to myself, we'll be back because we got the nucleus. I'm thinking to myself on defense, we got the nucleus. On, offensively, we got Barry Sanders, we got Herman Moore. Defensively, we got Chris Spielman, Jerry Ball, Michael Kofor was an impact player, but he was hurt all the damn time. But in any case, point is, 1992, everybody felt like all the Lions really needed was a pass rusher. So they drafted Robert Porsche. Well, they get Porsche, but then they lose another blocker on offense because Eric Andolsek was killed in his front yard when a drunk driver drove up on his front lawn and ran him over. So the Lions, I think the Lions finished either 5-11 or 6-10 in 1992. 1993, Lions jump out to a hot start. I think the Lions started out 7-2. And then Thanksgiving Day, 1993, against the Chicago Bears, Barry Sanders gets hurt. He got tackled funny and his knee got drove into the ground, and the Lions lost him for the rest of the year. In steps Eric Lynch out of Grand Valley, which I eventually got to meet him and became friends with him because I ran into a nightclub. I ran into him at a nightclub. He steps in, and I think the Lions had finally stopped like a 3-game losing streak because, as I was saying, they started out 7-2. Sanders gets hurt. I think by that game, they had already like lost 3 straight. So now the Lions are 7-5, and I think they go off and finish up the season 10-6. They actually win the division at 10-6. First home playoff game is against Green Bay and Brett Favre. Well, we get Barry Sanders back for that game. He had a pretty good game. He ran pretty good. Lions were in control of that game. Brett Favre, I think one of the last plays of the game, he scrambles out of the pocket. He throws a deep pass to Sterling Sharp. He catches it in the end zone or some shit like that. Lions lose the game, get put out of the playoffs. 1993 is also the year that Wayne Fontes was juggling all the quarterbacks. One week he'd go with Rodney Peete. The next week he'd go with Eric Kramer. The next week he'd go with Andre Ware. And so the Lions decided that they needed the man on quarterback. And in 1994, they signed Scott Mitchell to a 3-year, $10 million contract. Lions start out 0-2. They beat Dallas week 3, Monday night. One of the best games I've ever seen. That year, I think I think they got bumped out by Green Bay again. This time I think they had to go to I think they had to go to Lambeau Field, and the referees I think made some fucked up call talking about Herman Moore didn't demonstrate control of the ball. Like as he was catching the ball, he didn't demonstrate that he had control of the ball. Some bullshit, and they ruled it an incomplete pass when he caught it in the end zone. I've never seen a team have full momentum in there and then just let it go to and give it to the other team. Purdy was struggling and frustrated. The crowd was quiet, and they fumbled the whole damn thing. To me, that goes back to the Lions in the second half not keeping the pressure on Purdy. They stopped blitzing for whatever reason. You know goddamn well your secondary. You know what I think the Lions thought? I think when the Lions had Purdy shook up in the first half, I think the Lions was thinking like, okay, we rattled him enough. Now we can fall back and, maybe he'll throw some interceptions. No. When he realized the Lions weren't blitzing, he sat in the pocket and he waited for somebody to come open, and he was hitting them. And then if somebody wasn't open, he escaped the pocket by running straight up the middle on them. It wasn't a case where he got flushed to the outside or something like that and had to scramble for out of bounds. He scrambled right up the damn middle. So, so let me get back to where I was going. So again, 1997, I think the Lions finished 10-6 again, but I think Green Bay finished up 11-5 or 12-4, something like that year. The Lions, I think they had to go to Green Bay. I think they had to go to Green Bay again. And I think they got put out in the first round. That was 1994, I believe. And I have to go back to the 1995 season, because 1994 was Scott Mitchell's first year with the team. 1995, I have to go back and see what their record was that year. But 1996, for as shitty as a quarterback that Scott Mitchell was, he was breaking a lot of Bobby Lane's old passing records. And crazy part about it, and the Lions actually had the number one offense. Well, once again, the Lions go on the road. I think they finished up 10-6 that year. And I think this was in 1996. They go on the road to Philadelphia, and I think Scott Mitchell threw like 6 damn interceptions that game. And the Lions, I think they got blew out like 52-17. What did the Lions do? They re-signed Scott Mitchell. I believe I think 1996 was also the year that Wayne Fontes got fired. So for the 1997 season, Bobby Ross was their head coach. And I think he was there for 2 years. Now, I believe Barry retired in 1998 or 1999. And sometime after Barry retired, Bobby Ross quit. Halfway through the season, he stepped down as their head coach. And he basically said, hey, you try to mold a team in your image. And they didn't respond. And he quit. In steps Gary Moeller to finish up the season. And the Lions finished up 8-8. And the Lions almost got into the playoffs with an 8-8 record. But I think Paul Edinger, the field goal kicker for the Chicago Bears, he kicked the field goal. Whatever game they were playing, he kicked the field goal. What I can't remember is whether he kicked it against the Lions or if he kicked it against another team where they ended up winning and it knocked the Lions out of the playoffs. So 2000, I think it was, nonetheless, we weren't even supposed to be close to this. I hope Ben Johnson sticks around. I still believe in Campbell. A lot of great things this year. Some things need to be fixing on the next year. I believe in Campbell myself. But I'm taking a long time to get to my point. I took you through a timeline of the Lions from 1991 to like I think again Bobby Ross quit, I believe, in 1999, and in 2000 I think the Lions had hired Marty Morningwig as their coach, and because I think that was Matt Millen's first year as president. They fired him after 2 years. Then I think after that they hired Steve Mariucci as their coach, and I think he was there for 2 or 3 years. He got fired. Then Rod Marinelli became the coach. He got fired. And then after that, I think the Lions had, I think that's when Martin Mayhew had became the general manager, and Jim Caldwell became their coach. And under Jim Caldwell, I think the Lions went to the playoffs twice with Matthew Stafford and Megatron. And one of those years, the Lions finished up 11-5, and I think that's the year they went to Dallas, and the referees fucked the Lions over. They got put out in the first round. I think the next year the Lions finished up. I think they finished up 9-7, and they got put out by Seattle in the first round. And again, I think the referees fucked them over. And then the Lions decided that they wanted to be the next New England Patriots, so they hired Dan Quinn and Matt Patricia as GM and head coach, and they fired Jim Caldwell, even though he took them to the playoffs twice. One of the reasons, when I broke down that timeline, one of the reasons why the Lions never got back to the NFC Championship game is because of William Clay Ford, the owner of the Detroit Lions at the time. He was not trying to put a winning team out there. All he was trying to do was keep the stadium full. And that meant basically keeping Barry Sanders under contract because everybody was there to see Barry. If Barry ain't there, we ain't winning shit. Nobody's coming to the games. So they definitely made sure they kept Barry signed. But other than that, William Clay Ford didn't want to pay nobody. He ran that team like a fucking factory. All he cared about was keeping the damn stadium full and keeping the payroll down. They didn't want to pay any free agents. Here's a prime example. I believe the year was 1996. The NFL Players Association had won a case in court where NFL players can become free agents after 4 years. It used to be 6. So when the Players Association won a judgment in their favor that allowed players to become free agents after 4 years, the biggest free agent out there was Reggie White. Everybody was after Reggie White. By the time the Lions had interviewed Reggie White, at that time, New Orleans was offering the biggest contract. They were offering $15 million. The Lions bring in Reggie White. They interview him, and they offer him $12 million. What kind of shit is that? That was the shit that the Lions was doing back then. He ended up going to Green Bay because he signed a $17.9 million contract. The point is that by the time the Lions interviewed him, they knew what the highest offer was. They knew it was $15 million. And you come back with $12 million? You wanted to losing his franchise in the modern era. What the fuck makes you think that Reggie White would take a $3 million pay cut to come and play for the Lions? You know, because if you're thinking that, you know, that he would take a $3 million pay cut just to play next to Barry Sanders, you out your damn mind. There was other things that the Lions did too. There was a linebacker, there was an all-pro linebacker for the Buccaneers named Broderick Thomas. He had been shot. So he was out of football for a little while. So the Lions gave him a call. He was sitting at home. He was not playing any football. The Lions signed him to a league minimum, $150,000. That was the league minimum for veterans. Dude was balling out and had an all-pro year for the Lions. Well, he's a free agent. The Lions, he ended up going to Minnesota. What ended up happening was the Lions offered him $1 million. Minnesota offered him $1.2 million. The Lions wouldn't match it. So he went to Minnesota. And the thing about it was, he said he wanted to stay in Detroit, but he had to go with the best offer. So he ended up going to Minnesota for $1.2 million, and the Lions offered $1 million. Another thing that the Lions did that was disgraceful, the way they treated Chris Spielman. His last year in Detroit, he had a torn pectoral muscle. Played his fucking ass off. He was going to be a free agent. All year the media kept asking him about, you know, about contract extensions, this, that, this. He said, I don't want to talk about contracts. We got to play ball. We trying to get to the playoffs. The season is over, and the Lions don't even offer him a contract. What happened was the Lions thought that because of that torn pectoral muscle, that Chris Spielman would not pass anyone's physical, and he would have to come back to the Lions for less money. But instead, he goes to Buffalo for a 4-year, $8 million contract. Lomas Brown left because he got tired of the bullshit. And Barry Sanders is watching all his teammates go to other teams because the Lions either didn't re-sign them or did not want to pay them their market value. So by the time the Lions retired, by the time Barry retired, they're going through a fucking rebuilding stage again. To me, all that fell on the owner. The Lions didn't want to pay anybody. The Lions, in my opinion, ended up being a fucking graveyard. The Lions ended up being an NFL graveyard because everybody who's been a head coach in Detroit, when they got through being a head coach in Detroit, they either went back to being coordinators or they was just out of football, period. Because I have no idea what happened to Bobby Ross after he quit on the Lions. Jim Schwartz, after he got fired, he went back, you know, he's back to being the defensive coordinator again. Same thing with Rod Marinelli. And same thing with Marty Morningwig. After he got fired, I think he went to Philadelphia to become the offensive coordinator there. I think Rod Marinelli, I think he ended up being the defensive coordinator in Dallas at some point. So much bullshit back then. But the thing about it is, going back to that 1991 season, the way Detroit beat Dallas, we felt like we only needed those one or two pieces and we'll be back. You would be well within your right to think that today, because the Lions had a magical season. Okay, headset turned off again, but this time I caught it. But yeah, the Lions had a magical season this year. The reason why I said that this team may not get another chance to get back to the NFC Championship game in my lifetime is because this team could end up getting picked apart. Ben Johnson could end up going to Washington. Aaron Glenn has been interviewed for a couple of head coaching jobs. Now, if the Lions end up losing both Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn, what the hell are you going to do? There's some people that's going to be free agents. C.J. Gardner-Johnson, I think he only signed a one-year contract with the Lions. He's going to be a free agent. I don't think anybody cares whether he's going to come back or not. But I think the one person who's going to be a free agent that you absolutely must re-sign is David Montgomery. Because I think he only signed a one-year deal with the Lions. Out of all the free agents, out of all the people that's going to be free agents with the Lions, David Montgomery is a must. I think over the long haul, I think Jahmyr Gibbs might end up being more valuable to the Lions than David Montgomery. But David Montgomery is a bowling ball. When he's on, when David Montgomery when he gets to chugging, like I said, he batters his way for 5, 6, 7 yards. A lot of great things to build off of. I think we absolutely need to spend money on a cornerback and an edge rusher, get another weapon for golf, draft a linebacker or a corner, bring Montgomery back. An edge rusher, yeah, an edge rusher. I'd like to see them get an edge rusher or get a linebacker in the draft. I'm fine with that. I don't think I want them drafting a cornerback through the draft because I think a rookie cornerback will end up getting worked over by these veteran wide receivers. Because I think if they go off and draft a cornerback, I can see where somebody like Justin Jefferson would work his ass over. Justin Jefferson, Deebo Samuels, CeeDee Lamb. Having to cover those dudes, you want to put a rookie cornerback on trying to cover those dudes. I wouldn't want to. I would actually, even though C.J. Gardner-Johnson, you could probably make the case that he didn't work out. I think I would probably still try to get a veteran cornerback through free agency. Let's see. Realistically, we have to sign the guys who deserve it. Spend a lot of money in the right areas and draft the right position today. Showed our roster needs more high class talent. Max Crosby is a free agent from Michigan. So, like, I can't really like I'm kind of just like coming back into football this year because I had got away from football because again I got tired of it looking like the NFL was rigged. It's like all we see is San Francisco, Dallas, New England, and now Kansas City in the Super Bowl. I felt I felt Major League Baseball was rigged because over in the National League, it's whoever. But in the American League, all we see is the Yankees going to the World Series. And I watched so many Yankee games as a Detroit Tigers fan. I've watched the umpires disrespect the Tigers so fucking much whenever they play the Yankees. I watch pitchers throw pitches. This is the plate, and they throw pitches way over here, and they call it a strike. And it would force the Detroit batters to have to chase after bad pitches or get called out looking. So I felt like Major League Baseball was rigged. I felt like the NBA was rigged because, you know, during the 80s, all we saw was the Lakers and Celtics in the finals, and then throughout the 90s, all we saw was the Bulls. You know, and then when Kobe came along, again, all we see is the Lakers in the finals. I get tired of seeing what looks like shit's being rigged just so they can get the big market teams, the perceived America's teams, you know, back to the championships. With the NBA, because the Celtics aren't what they were. The Lakers is still a high market team because when it comes to basketball, it seems like at some point everybody wants to play for the Lakers. When it comes to baseball, at some point everybody wants to play for the Yankees. These are the big market teams, and it seems like those commissions rig these games for those teams to get into the championship. But I would prefer we sign a star corner and also draft one in the first or second. Yeah, I can go with that. But yeah, I think when all is said and done, I'm a little bit worried that the Lions are going to get picked apart because, you know, Ben Johnson is a hot commodity. You know, and even though Aaron Glenn's defense has been suspect this year, he's been interviewed for head coaching jobs. Hell, even the guy that's supposed to succeed Ben Johnson has been interviewed for a head coaching job. So I guess the guy that's supposed to take Ben Johnson's place when he leaves, because I guess Ben Johnson has been grooming his kid for this moment, even he got interviewed for a head coaching job. Or at least a coaching position. I ain't going to say head coaching job, but I think he got interviewed for a coaching position, you know, whether it's coordinator or whatever the case may be. We got free agents, like I said, that we got to address. Most notably, David Montgomery. You know, the veterans like Taylor Decker and Frank Gaskell. I don't know what they're going to do about those. I don't know whether those guys are going to be free agents or not, and what the Lions plan to do about them if they are free agents. You know, Josh Reynolds disappointed me. If he ends up being a free agent and the Lions decide to let him go, you know, you could always get a second. You could always get a second or a third wide receiver on the depth chart through free agency, whatever you want to do. There's only two teams without a head coach, I believe. Seattle and Washington. Hope to God Ben Johnson doesn't leave. And I think the reason why Seattle and Washington don't have head coaches yet is because they were waiting for the Lions season to end, probably so they could make a move on Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn. I don't know about Seattle, but I'm led to believe that Washington absolutely wants Ben Johnson, but if they can't get him, they'll take Aaron Glenn. That's the impression that I get. I don't know. So, point being is, over the next couple of years, they're going to have to address some free agents. And if they lose both Aaron Glenn and Ben Johnson, I am really concerned about who's going to step in, what kind of philosophy they're going to have. And then the final thing is, I think as watching the Detroit Lions on the outside looking in, you know, Dan Campbell saying the kneecap biting thing and shit like that, that this team is going to take on this city's identity, tough, blue collar, yada yada. Oh, you said Montgomery is locked till 20. Might have been. Oh, that's beautiful. Cool. Montgomery is locked till 2026. All right, bet. Cool. We good there. You know, throughout my years of watching Lions, what I was going to say is that even though the Lions had some bad teams, they always had some good players. You know, even when Matt Millen was the president, I think they had Roy Williams. I'm trying to think, they had a couple of other receivers too. They had drafted I think they had drafted a wide receiver named Mike Williams. But in any case, during the Matt Millen era when he was president of the Lions, 3 straight years they drafted wide receivers with the number 1 pick because they was trying to put together that West Coast, 49ers offense from the Steve Young days. So what I was trying to say is that throughout those bad times, you know, with Rob Marinelli and Marty Morningwig, Jim Schwartz, whatever, they all said the same thing, that we're going to restore the roar. You know, Marty Morningwig came in saying the bar is high, you know, and all this kind of shit. When Marty Morningwig was the Lions head coach, the very first practice was a bad sign. I guess the Lions were practicing, and supposedly Marty Morningwig was upset with the way they were practicing. So he kicked everybody off the field, was like, you know, get your asses off the field, go home. And he put on some sunglasses and jumped on his Harley Davidson and rode off. I guess the purpose of that was to try to tell the Lions that if you guys are going to be half-assing at practice, why are we even here? So I'm just going to jump on my bike and ride off. That was a bad sign right from the start. And I think Roy Williams, um, he said he didn't know what that was about. He said I thought we were having a good practice. So he said he was surprised that Morningwig kicked them off the field. It says Garner Johnson, Vildor, Jonah Jackson, Reynolds are the big ones we have to sign. The Aquara brothers too, but those two guys suck. I really haven't seen enough of Vildor, but then again, I haven't seen enough of Garner Johnson. What worries me about signing Garner Johnson is what if he gets hurt again and we lose him for the whole fucking year. I'm led to believe that out of all the games, out of all the names you just ran off, free agents, I think Jonah Jackson sounds like he might be the highest priority. I really don't know that much about Jonah Jackson to tell you the truth, but I know when he got hurt, that was a big deal that everybody was talking about, and the Lions, I think, ended up making a move, signing some Tua, whatever his name was, some blocker that they put on the practice squad. I like what I saw with Vildor. I think we put too much pressure on his shoulders. With that secondary being as suspect as it was, everybody's under pressure, especially when they don't blitz and get after the quarterback. So I would be okay with Garner Johnson coming back if he shuts the fuck up and just plays good football because he's a talented player. Yeah, I mean, yeah. I think there's a time to talk trash. To talk trash, just to talk it. So coming back to what I was saying about past coaches of the past, talking about restoring the roar and all this kind of stuff and bring back the glory days and all this kind of shit. To his credit, Dan Campbell, I think his job was harder than Brad Holmes. Can I call in? Oh, I don't have a phone line set up or anything like that. I'm normally a gaming channel because, as you can see, I'm sitting right here in front of my racing wheel. I normally do VR, like stream racing games in VR, but I'm just as much a sports fan as I am a gamer. Because something that I did not mention is that competitiveness is in my blood. I'm Floyd Mayweather's first cousin. I grew up with him. I used to babysit him when his father was still fighting. So growing up as a kid, boxing came first. And then all the other sports just came whenever. But I've been familiar with boxing ever since I was a kid. I became a Lions fan in 1980. I was 13 years old at the time. That was Billy Sims' rookie year. And I became a Lions fan through my father because when the Lions drafted Billy Sims, my father was excited. I mean, he couldn't get enough of talking about Billy Sims. And the Lions actually started out 4-1 Billy Sims' rookie year. And I think the Lions, I know they got to the playoffs once in 1983 with Billy Sims. That was the year that they ironically they lost. You know what? Let me hit you guys with a little piece of trivia, right? The Lions had to go on the road to win to get to the Super Bowl, right? The last time the Lions had to go on the road to win a game to get to the championship game was 1957, and the Lions had to beat the 49ers in San Francisco to go on to the championship game in 1957, and they went on to win the championship by beating the Cleveland Browns in 1957. In 1983, that was Billy Sims' third year, Lions got into the playoffs under Monty Clark, who was the coach at the time. First round, they had to go to San Francisco against Joe Montana, and it was Roger Craig's rookie year, 1983. Lions lost that game 24-23 when Eddie Murray missed a kick that went wide right. The Lions would have won that game, and they would have got past the first round. So it's ironic that some of the Lions' worst playoff moments came at the hands of the San Francisco 49ers. You know, and Fasi, you're saying that all good, just wanted to say that the better team won. I would like to agree with you, but this is, but in keeping with true, that's keeping with sportsmanship on your end, I believe. But I truly don't believe that the better team won. The way the Lions manhandled the 49ers in the first half, one half of me was saying that if the Lions play like this the whole game, not only will they win this game, they will go to the Super Bowl and win it, because I believe that they could beat the Kansas City Chiefs. They already beat them this year in the season opener. But on the other hand, I'm like, okay, we know the Lions' history. We know they've been on the bad end of some, fuck calls from the referees. And that's one of the good things that did come out of this game. The referees did not fuck the Lions over. We cannot put this on the referees. I think the referees did a pretty good job of officiating that game. Unfortunately, way to end the season, but we can't act like we're not proud of how far we got. Not one, but two playoffs win. We will learn from this game and come back next year. And that's the part I'm not sure about, because I thought we had to address some free agents, and I thought David Montgomery was one of them. But Jerry said that Montgomery is locked until 2026, because I thought he was going to be a free agent, so I thought he was going to be the one that they absolutely had to address. But even if we sign a couple of good corners and stuff, what have you, what are we going to get as far as an offensive coordinator or defensive coordinator? Because everybody's kind of assuming that Ben Johnson is going to go to Washington. Aaron Glenn, that's a sticky situation, because if he doesn't get a head coaching job, what would the Lions do about him? Will they bring him back, or will they get rid of him and get a new defensive coordinator? Because I think he played his part in this, because I think he did. I think he played his part. Because with this game, I think it's more to do. I think it's more to do of what the Lions did to lose this game rather than what San Francisco did to win it. I don't think Aaron Glenn goes anywhere. He isn't ready for a head coaching job. I would agree with that, but hey, he still was getting interviews. I think he still had 2 or 3 interviews. I think he had an interview by Zoom call, and I think some teams were waiting for the Lions season to be over so they could bring him in for an in-person interview. He wasn't great, but he was good enough to come back. Let's see here. Brad McCoy. Ever since Brad Holmes and Dan came in, we haven't missed on that many draft picks. No, no. You know, and that was something that I was trying to explain to Jerry. In all fairness, even though I thought Dan Campbell did some dumb shit going forward on 4th and 2, I think his job was tougher than Brad Holmes. Brad Holmes can make draft moves. He can make free agent moves. He can put that talented team on the field. Dan Campbell was the one that had to find a way to get all these guys to buy into what he was saying and to get everybody on the same page. And so, to his credit, he did that. They bought into his philosophy. They fought for him. They played their asses off for him. The team, they fought for each other. They loved each other. They trust each other. Because I've seen some really bad Lions teams where they were not playing for the team. They were only playing for themselves. They might have been in the last year of a contract and they were looking to get a big free agent contract somewhere else, so they would ball their asses off that last year. But the previous years, they would miss blocks. They wouldn't try to block somebody. They catch the ball and they wouldn't fight for that extra yard. They catch the ball. We need 9 yards to get a first down. They run out of bounds at the after 7 yards because they don't want to get hit and they don't want to fight for the extra 2 yards. We've had a lot of players. We've had some talented players on Detroit in the past, but the coaches couldn't get them to buy into the philosophy and couldn't get them to buy into the system. So we had a lot of people, in my opinion, that did not want to be here. So they were playing to protect themselves. They didn't want to risk getting hurt. They wanted to get out of Detroit unscathed and go somewhere else. They wanted to play out the rookie contracts when they become a free agent, go somewhere else or whatever. This team right here, they play their asses off for the coach. They play their asses off for the city. They play their asses off for each other. That's, in all my years of watching the Detroit Lions, that's something that I have not seen much. I think only 2 coaching eras have I seen the Lions fight for each other and come together as a team. And that was the 1991 season under Wayne Fontes. They was playing on emotions. They were playing for Mike Utley, who had been paralyzed. They were playing for each other. They fought. They bought into the system. And then I think under Jim Caldwell, when the Lions finished up 11-5 under Jim Caldwell with Calvin Johnson and Matthew Stafford, they had a decent team back then. The Lions fought that year too. I think that was the year that was another time that the Lions believed in each other. And they put the team before themselves and they fought. Until this group of Lions came along, those were the only 2 times in my years of watching the Lions where I felt like they fought for each other and they put the team above themselves. So I'm trying to say that here in Detroit, trying to get the players to believe in your system and put the team before themselves, I think was a hard thing to do. Because since a lot of people did not want to be in Detroit for a lot of years, they just came here, did their time as if they were in prison. Let me come here, serve my time, and then get the hell out of here and go somewhere else. This is the first Lions team that I saw where people were saying that they wanted to come play for Detroit. I had never seen that in my life. Let's see here, which is why I trust them to make the right moves, but Brad has to open the checkbook for once and go pay free agents. Yeah. Let me see here. Going forward on 4th today was dumb given the situation and what game we were in, but the aggressiveness is how we got here in the first place. But that goes back to something that I was saying, using a basketball philosophy. Every shot does not have to be a three-pointer. Sometimes when that open layup is there, you got to take it. I'll take an easy 2 over a contested 3 every day of the week when it comes to basketball. Okay, my headset, it'll shut off on me after a while. But I was saying that I would rather, when it, like using the basketball philosophy, I would take an easy layup over a contested 3-pointer every day of the week. You got Kobe Bryant trying to shoot over 3 people from the 3-point line, I'm going to pull my fucking hair out. If that lane is open, pass it to a man and let him get the easy layup. Because you built your reputation off of going for it on 4th down, and because you found some success on 4th down, doesn't mean you're supposed to go for it every single time there's a 4th down situation. That shit he did back in the Baltimore game when they went for it on 4th down, trying to fake that punt deep in their own territory, and Baltimore wasn't buying it. And when Dan Campbell did that dumb shit, the Lions weren't even in that big of a hole when he did it. But he automatically gave them the ball in field goal. He automatically gave Baltimore the ball in field goal range from going for it on that dumbass 4th down. Sometimes you have to take what the defense gives you. When you're up to bat in baseball, you can't swing at every single pitch. That pitcher's not going to put fastballs over the plate every single time. He's going to throw some breaking balls. He's going to throw some balls that's going to drop in the dirt. Because they know if you're over aggressive with that bat, they know you're going to chase after bad pitches. Sometimes you got to take some of those pitches. In my opinion, what was wrong? The Lions were showing you that they could move. The Lions were showing you that they could move the ball. The kicker had just nailed a 44-yard kick, or whatever the case may be. If he had missed his field goal attempt, I can understand them going for it on 4th down because you don't trust the kicker. But he nailed it. Sent that shit straight down the pipe. Your offense has showed you that they can move the ball. Why not take the 3, make an adjustment, so the next time you get down there, then you can come up with a way to get in there. This team we have is something special. If we spend the money, I don't see any free agent wanting to come and play for us. Here is my biggest worry coming in the next year. While we're on that subject of Dan Campbell going for it on 4th down. This is the second game, in my opinion, that Dan Campbell made a reckless decision that cost the Lions a game. He made a reckless decision against Dallas to go for it on 4th down 3 times. And he did it twice today. If you keep going for it on 4th down and they keep losing games because of this reckless decision, sooner or later the players are going to quit on you. Let's say the Lions next year, let's say they start out 1-5. And out of those 5 losses, they lost 3 of them because Campbell went for it on 4th down. Now you're 1-5. Your chances of getting to the playoffs are not good. Now players are going to start thinking about themselves. They're not going to be thinking about the team anymore. Especially if that player is a free agent. So to put it simply put, if he keeps going for it on fourth down with these reckless calls and he keeps losing games for him, he is going to lose that locker room. To his credit, I think Campbell worked his ass off to get that team to believe in him, to believe in the system, to play for each other, to trust each other. And you can destroy all of that by basically snatching the victory out of your own people's hands. Okay, how about this philosophy? Kobe Bryant. He keeps shooting three-pointers with 3 and 4 defenders in his face. He keeps missing shots, and eventually we lose the game because of it. At some point, I'm going to talk to the coach and say, look, this guy is shooting us out the game. He is shooting balls from another stratosphere with 3 defenders in his face, and there's open people under the basket, and he refuses to pass to them so we can get the easy layup. If the coach doesn't do anything about it, and he continues to let Kobe Bryant keep shooting these dumbass three-pointers with a bunch of people in his face, eventually I'm going to quit. I'm going to quit fighting for rebounds. I'm going to quit chasing after the loose balls. I'm not going to follow the plays that the coach breaks down. When I get the ball, I'm going to start being selfish, thinking about me, making sure I get my touches, making sure I get my points. I get the ball, the play calls for me to kick it back out to Kobe. Why? Because if I kick it back out to him, I'm not going to see the ball again, because he's going to shoot it with 3 people in his face. He's shooting us out of the game, and the coach is letting us do it. It's only a matter of time before I quit on the team. It's only a matter of time before I stop going after the rebounds, before I stop going after the loose balls. It's only a matter of time before I stop trying to contest shots. It's only a matter of time before I start trying to protect myself from injury. I'm not going to block this shot because I don't want to come down on somebody's ankle and roll it. These dudes are sacrificing themselves for Dan Campbell. Look how many damn injuries we've had this year, and people still fighting to get back on the field and play through these damn injuries. How long are they going to keep that mentality if Campbell keeps coaching us out of games with these dumbass fourth down gambles? There's a time and a place for it. Every single fourth down doesn't automatically mean we got to go for it. Sometimes we got to take the 3 points. You said last thing that pissed me off was the run call on the goal line at the end of the game. Made us waste a timeout and we shot ourselves in the foot again. They ran the clock out after the onside kick. Yeah. But we never get put in that position if we contain Brock Purdy. Because on that drive, what put them in that position, Brock Purdy escaped the pocket twice. The Lions almost had him, and he escaped the pocket, ran straight up the middle. Know why? Because nobody was blitzing straight up the middle. Everybody dropped back in coverage. So when Purdy took off running, by the time somebody got after him, he was already 15, 20 yards down the field. If you blitz him straight up the middle and get in his face, now he's rushing to get the ball off because he don't want to get sacked. Now he's throwing up wounded ducks and prayers. That's what we were seeing in the first half. So that call at the goal line that forced them to burn the timeout, it never should have came to that. My emotions tonight. I had not I had felt something that I hadn't felt in years. During the Barry Sanders days, the Lions were known throughout the NFL for finding ways to lose games. And it would make me very, very emotional. The Lions would lose a game and I would get so mad. My father would get mad. My brothers would get mad. And we all dealt with the anger differently. Meanwhile, my mother's laughing because she enjoyed getting up under my father's skin whenever the Lions lost. You know, the Lions would lose. My father would get pissed off. I get pissed off. My mother would be like, see, I told you they're going to lose. You know, and then the very next week, you know, we try to start over from scratch. Okay, last week is in the win. We're going to win today. We're going to right the ship. We're going to start winning today. And my mother would walk in front of the TV and be like, the Lions going to lose. You know, that kind of shit. The Lions made me such an emotional wreck back in the Barry Sanders days that I broke dates. I would have dates planned after the game. You know, I tell a girl, okay, you know, I'm going to watch the Lions game. After the game is over, I'll call you. We go to the movies. We go to dinner or something like that. The Lions would lose, and the girl would call me and be like, are we still going out? And I'm like, hell no. Hang up on her. Or I just simply wouldn't call them. Lions make me so fucking mad. I would go up in my bedroom and close the door and just lay in my bed. And yeah, sometimes I cry. And this was like tears of rage. Like, when is this shit going to stop? When are they going to stop being bad? And then, bing, one thing hit me. I was like, the Lions never going to be a good team until William Clay Ford dies. Because he's not going to sell the team, but he's not making an effort to make them better. His son, Bill Jr., he wanted to build a winner. He was urging the father, we need a president, we need this, we need this, we need this. He wanted to win. So I assumed that when William Clay Ford died, that his son, Bill Jr., was going to take over the team. Instead, his wife, Martha, took over the team, and it was the same bullshit. You know, hiring the wrong people, not making an effort to put a good team out there. She got in trouble with the NFL because during this Colin Kaepernick shit, he was taking knees, and black players around the league was taking knees in support of him. And some of the Lions players, I don't know if they took knees, but I guess they were talking about it. So Martha Ford, I guess it was alleged that she was trying to bribe players not to take knees. So she got in trouble with the NFL, and she stepped down as the owner, and her daughter, Sheila, took over. So I'm like, Bill should be running this team. Bill Jr. should be running this team. Instead, you know, Sheila was running the team, and I was thinking to myself, it's going to be more of the same goddamn shit. One of her first moves when she took over as owner was firing Dan Quinn and Matt Patricia. That was a move in the right direction. And then she repaired the relationships with Chris Spielman, Barry Sanders, and Calvin Johnson. That was another good move, but I felt like that was just a PR move. I felt like the reason why she repaired the relationships with Chris Spielman, Barry Sanders, and Calvin Johnson is since we don't have a talented team, by having Barry Sanders come to games and do the old waving at everybody and shit like that, that people would come just to even get a glimpse of Barry Sanders. I didn't know that she was using them, basically using them, Barry and Calvin, as ambassadors. She brought Chris Spielman on board, and he had a big hand in the Lions hiring Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes at their respective positions. It wasn't a situation of them hiring Brad Holmes as GM and then he goes and hires Dan Campbell as coach. No, they was brought in at the same time, and they just happened to click. You said, I love the quote, I'd rather die standing than live on my knees. However, today I felt like we lived on our feet and died on our knees. Sad way to lose. Hope we come back. I'm going to bed. Good night. You have a good night. I'm going to get ready to wrap this up myself because I don't even know how I still even got a voice left. I definitely didn't plan on being on this long. Um, Let me check something real quick, folks. Um, I would say, you said I did not know that. That's awesome. Yeah, absolutely. Um, yeah, on paper, we should be back next year. We should be a good team this year. But you should do more sports talk more often. You're very knowledgeable. Yeah, thank you very much. Um, it's just years and years and years of being a Lions fan. Some good memories, a lot of painful ones. Um, yeah, I mean, I'd like to think that we'll be back next year. I really do hope that Ben Johnson comes back. Now, I'll say that if the Lions keep Aaron Glenn, I already think that the fans are not going to be happy with that move. And I would say that if they keep Aaron Glenn, the first game that the Lions lose where they give up like 35 points or they have a second half meltdown, that'll be the game where the fans will pretty much issue an ultimatum where they'll basically say either Aaron Glenn goes or Campbell goes. Um, and as far as saying that, the better team won tonight, I don't really feel that way. I felt like the better team found the way to lose it. Because even on paper, even though the 49ers had better stats on papers, I felt that the Lions were the better team and they played like it in that first half. They played like a team that was hungry to get to the Super Bowl. I just don't know what this team is going to look like next year. And that's something that I'm really concerned about. Um, this is this this podcast is pretty much a one-off. I have no interest in watching the Super Bowl, and then I'll be going back to my gaming life. Yeah, probably won't. You probably won't see me say anything about football again until next year when the regular season starts because I could care less about the preseason because the year the year that the Lions went 0-16, they actually went undefeated in the preseason. They won all four of their preseason games, and I think that's one of the things that prompted John Kitna to make a guarantee that he felt like the Lions would win. He guaranteed that the Lions would win 10 games that year, and they'd go 0-16. Just you know, the Lions, the season is over. You know, a lot of these Detroit Lions channels are going to talk about this for the next couple of days. It's going to die down. You know, it might ramp up again, assuming that Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn become head coaches somewhere. Then people will talk for a few more days, talking about, who's going to take the place, what is this team going to look like next year, yada, yada, yada. I'm not, this is a gaming channel, so I don't want to mess up the algorithm and start mixing sports in with it. This is, like I said, this is pretty much a one-off. As far as talking about sports, probably won't see me talk about football again until the regular season starts again next year. Um, I just don't have it in me to talk about football during the off season and say this, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that, yada yada yada. Yeah, I'll be excited for it, but it's just, this just this hurts because um, I was telling my brother they were so excited because they was like, yo, we ahead of schedule. They had a plan that by year 5 we're gonna be doing this, we're gonna be doing that. I said no, they have to do it this year because it was way back in like week 5 that they were already talking about Ben Johnson becoming a head coach somewhere and all this kind of shit. So I was like, if our coaching staff gets picked apart because the Lions defense was actually pretty good at the beginning of the season. They held Kansas City to 20 points, and I mean they beat the dog shit out of the Raiders on Monday night. So I mean, until they ran into Baltimore, the Lions was actually playing pretty good defense. Because I think they were holding teams under 24 points. But anyway, while everybody was talking about the roadmap and how we're ahead of schedule, so anything that happens from here, we overachieved. Just something to be, something we should be proud of. Yada yada yada. I'm proud of it, but in my opinion, we had to do it this year because we're gonna lose some pieces of our coaching staff. Now I have no idea what this coaching staff is gonna look like, and who knows if the next offensive coordinator is going to come in and deconstruct the team before he molds it in his own philosophy. So just as easily as we finished up 12-5 this year, we could easily be 5-12 next year if the right things don't happen. Still love the Lions. Still gonna be pulling for them. It's just this is a one-off, and we'll talk again at the beginning of the season next year. With that, I'm gonna go ahead and boogie on out of here. I want to thank you all for watching. Really appreciate it. Again, with this being a gaming channel, I never expected a lot of people to come in, but I definitely appreciate the conversation. And hey, if you like VR sim racing, don't hesitate to drop in on me and watch me do a racing VR or whatever. But other than that, Thanks for dropping in. With that, I'm going to go ahead and sign off. I usually sign off a certain way. And so, for those that's new to the channel, my send off goes like this. You all know the line. Wakanda forever. Long live the king, and deuces. Thank you so much for tuning in. Really appreciate it. We'll see you more sooner than later, I hope. So everybody take a good night. Have a good night. We'll pick up the pieces and dust ourselves off and come back next year. All right, folks. That'll do it for me. Have a good night.